What's up, y'all? Back again today with a very important video as always. So this is something particularly that I want to talk about that I feel like everybody needs to focus on and practice. And I feel like it's lacking in our communities. I feel like it's lacking in our civilization. I feel like it's lacking in our society, period. So without further ado, the title of this video would be wisdom. Simple as that, wisdom. So now what is wisdom? As always, when I'm introducing or speaking or discussing about these things, I want to make sure there's a general understanding with the words that we're using. So when I say wisdom, what do I mean? Before I get to wisdom, in order to define wisdom, it's first important to define or understand that there's a difference between information, right? There's a difference between intelligence, there's a difference between knowledge, and there's a difference between wisdom. So all of those things are different, and we need to understand that sole fact, that there's a difference between information, intelligence, knowledge, and wisdom. And my purpose of this video is to explain furthermore what are the differences and why we should strive for wisdom. So to begin, we have to start at the basis. The basis would be information. Mind you, all of these things relate. So at the very basis of life, at the very basis of our environment, or at the very basis of our experience that we call life, there's different sets of information. So the information right now is I'm a human. That's information. There's information like, for instance, I'm recording a video. This is a video that you're watching. That's information. These are trees. This is information. Simple information. Okay? We have to understand what information is. Information is simple data. Simply put, it's data. The data that's there, it doesn't need anyone to decide it. It doesn't need anyone to reevaluate it. Information is purely data. Now that we can come to that conclusion, we have to come to the second step. Remembering that information is the basis of all wisdom or all understanding, our next goal would be then to understand what is intelligence. Intelligence is the acquisition of data. So again, intelligence is basically the acquisition. You have acquired this data. This is why we have things called artificial intelligence, where it's a device or something of that nature that simply has a certain amount of data that it has recorded. Artificial intelligence. So now we've made this distinction between data or information and intelligence, we can start to see that there are differences, right? So now let's move forward. So now we have data, which is simple information. The sky is blue, or this is the sky, should I say. This is the grass. This is pure information. Intelligence is the understanding. Once you pass the data phase, intelligence only comes with a being or an entity. It is then personalized. So now I understand this intelligence. This is where a third party comes in, or should I say a second party. The information is the first party. The second party is the observer. So now he's observing the data, and he collects this data or acquires this data. That's intelligence. So you see many intelligent people nowadays. We have many intelligent people who have acquired many forms of data. They heard this at school. They learned this from their parents. They were educated by religion. So they have a bunch of different resources of data that they've acquired that they can pull from. Many intelligent people. There's nothing wrong with an intelligent person. But we need to break past that threshold of intelligence. Okay? So now I'm asking you to be more than just intelligent. We have to understand that there's levels. So the first level being data or information. The second level being intelligence, which is the acquisition of this data, of this information. Now the third part, or where many people stop, or where many people haven't even got to yet, is knowledge. Knowledge, although it's not the end-all be-all of what we want to strive for, it is very, very something that we need to look at. Knowledge is, now, we have to understand that data is simple information. There's information, the acquisition of that information, which is what? Intelligence. And then we move forward. It's knowledge is the comprehension of this intelligence. You see? So now, we can start seeing how it's a train, or it's connected to one another. Because if you start from the last to the first so far, we have knowledge, which is an acquisition, or should I say, knowledge is a comprehension of the acquisition of information. You see? So information being the data, number 2 being the intelligence, number 3 being the knowledge. Now, this is where it's very important. This is what I want to strive for, what I'm constantly striving for, what I feel like you need to strive for. Wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the proper application of knowledge. Okay? Simple as that. So now, we can then make a correlation or a distinction between the 4 sets. Information, intelligence, knowledge, and wisdom. We have to understand that there's a difference. First, you must have a set of information. You first must have a set of data. From this data, you must acquire the data. You must acquire this information. It's important to acquire this information. Once you acquire this information, what do? After you acquire this information, you move on to being knowledgeable. Because you're intelligent once you acquire the data. You're already intelligent. Now it's your job to become knowledgeable. What is knowledgeable? The comprehension, the understanding of the data that you possess. So now you can possess this data, you can possess that data, you can possess this. You've heard many sets of information that you've recorded in your memory. But if you don't learn how to comprehend, right, and to fully understand the complete scope of the information that you've acquired, of your intelligence, then you have a cap, you have a limit on what you can do. What I'm saying is it's important for us to push forward, because then we move into knowledge. We move forward into wisdom. What is wisdom? Again, wisdom is the application, the proper application of this knowledge. So by the time you have knowledge, you've already acquired information. So now it's important to learn when, where, how, why to use this knowledge. You've already comprehended. By the time you're at knowledge, you've already comprehended the data that's in front of you, right? So now it's your job to know when to act on this knowledge. Because if you have a knowledge and an understanding of something, then hopefully you'll know the right way to distribute this knowledge. For instance, we can use many different things as our examples. I can use something as simple as a pineapple to explain wisdom. The data would be that it's a pineapple. The data would be the fruit in the tree, or the fruit that grew from the ground. What we know as a pineapple, that is the data. It's there. As a human being observing this, I then gain the intelligence that this is a pineapple. That's purely information. My knowledge comes in, right, when I'm able to understand what this pineapple is, where this pineapple came from, what the uses are for it. And then my wisdom comes in when I'm able to use this pineapple to garnish the proper drinks, to use it to heighten the flavor of certain food, when I use it for its healing qualities, being that it's a fruit. Do you understand the differences between these? If you start to understand the difference, then we can then make the determination that wisdom is king. Wisdom reigns supreme. there's a rapper, should I say a hip-hop artist, one of the pioneers in hip-hop. His name is KRS-One. Many people know about him. He's, like I said, one of the founders of what we know as hip-hop or rap today. His name was KRS-One. What does that mean? Knowledge reigns supreme. One. And I do agree that knowledge is important. But really, when I come to the understanding is that wisdom reigns supreme. Wisdom is what we need to use to be able to discern and properly take the correct course of action for the conflicts in our life. As children of God, because I always bring God up, regardless of if you call him God, regardless of the name you call him, as a child of righteousness, we have the obligation to be able to use our discernment. Our discernment is a combination of our wisdom, a combination of our knowledge, a combination of our intellect, and a combination of the data around us. Is what we use for our discernment in order to know what to do next. So never should you ever react to conflict or really do anything without using wisdom. When you wake up in the morning, you should use the wisdom as to which ways you should go. How will this help us? When you look in our current society, what do we see? We see a lot of workers. Everyone has a job, or most of the people have jobs, but none of them are really taking on tasks and challenging tasks. What do I mean by that? If you look at the majority of people working, they have jobs that they were trained for, true enough, so they're displaying a certain level of intellect because they were given information, they've acquired information, and at the most, they'll slightly use knowledge. They'll slightly use their understanding of the information that they've acquired in order to do the task. But most jobs in America and around the world have been reduced to purely just functions. Functions in which you're never critically thinking. What do I mean by critically thinking? Critically thinking means you are presented with an issue, you are presented with a circumstance in which now you have the job or the obligation to fix a problem or to come to the conclusion of an equation. It's now, as a critical thinker, it is your job now to not focus on data, to not focus on intellect or even knowledge, but to focus on wisdom in order to use your discernment in order how to do it. So if a rock is coming at you, you have to use the critical thinking to say, this is my situation. It doesn't matter what I was taught. It doesn't matter what happened before. This is what's happening now. And in order to preserve myself, I have to use the wisdom to know that this is a rock, which is information, and then to know that it's coming at me, which is comprehension. The knowledge that if it hits me, it'll hurt, and the wisdom to know to move out of the way when it comes my way. These are all different aspects. So if we're skipping one, we can never get to wisdom. And similarly, if we're only doing some, we're not doing all of them. That's not what we need. In order to move forward in the evolution process, in order to move forward as a human race, as a humankind, for positive progression, what do we have to do? We have to use knowledge. We have to use wisdom, not just information and intellect. Intellect is purely acquired information. A robot can use intellect. So now, why do I say that? I say, when you look at TV, it's giving you data. It's giving you intelligence even, because now you're acquiring data. When you play video games, it's giving you data. You're observing data. When you're on your phone, if you're not researching and studying for your own benefit, if you're just on Instagram or these type of things that are solely entertaining, you're just receiving data. You're never getting past intellect. So as you see, when you go to a basketball game, a football game, a baseball game, you're receiving data. You're on the other end of receiving data. When you go to church, if you're not utilizing and applying the word to your life, all you're doing is receiving data. Do you see how every single aspect of our civilization in current society is based upon simply receiving data, nothing asks you to be a critical thinker anymore. Nothing asks you to use discernment or to use wisdom anymore. Nothing asks you to say, what do you, human being who's lived years on this planet, what do you think about this scenario? When you watch the news, they're simply giving you data. They're giving you narratives. And they're going so far as to give you conclusions that aren't even necessarily accurate, or they're biased. They're so far as to give you opinions. America has gotten so diluted and has moved so far away from their wise ways that now we can watch the news and basically be implanted with an opinion. An opinion should only come at the state of wiseness. An opinion should only come after you've gathered information, which is intelligence, after you've understood and comprehended that information, then you make an opinion. That is wisdom. So many people are making opinions based off data. They heard the data, they skipped step 2, they skipped step 3, and they went straight to an opinion. This is not right. In order to use our discernment, we have to first realize that we must strive to be wise. Any child of God or any righteous person is going to strive for wisdom. He's not content with simple knowledge. He's not content with simple intellect. Intellect can be misconstrued, and knowledge can be used for one's manipulation or for one's own gain. True wisdom comes with understanding of your surroundings, and the understanding is that we are all connected. So true wisdom comes with connection. So with that being said, I want us to understand and take more time to really evaluate what it is that we want from life. Do we just want to be the receivers of information? Do we just want to be external stimuli? Or do we want to comprehend, acquire, understand, and use discernment in order to cater to our life, in order to manifest our dreams? Because otherwise you're living in someone else's reality. If someone else presents it to you and you're not using discernment, comprehension, then you're just more easily acceptable to it. You can accept something that someone tells you if you don't use your own critical thinking skills. So what's happening in our news, in our politics? What's happening in the presidential races? What's happening on the comments on YouTube and on the internet? No one's using wisdom. No one's using discernment. No one's using courage. No one's using compassion. So I wanted to bring this up to you to make you realize that there is a difference between information, which is data, right? Between intelligence, which is the acquisition of this data, between knowledge, which is the comprehension of the data that you have acquired, right? And then wisdom, which is the proper application, right, of the comprehension of the data that you have acquired. So thank you so much. I appreciate you as always. I hope that you take this and use it to your circumstance and use wisdom to be able to discern what is right and wrong for you in this lifetime. I love you, and vibrate higher.